Welcome back to J&R Books, and today we have a very special guest, and his name is
His
Jamie.
name
Where are you coming?
is the teacher, the guy, the man. Introducing Dr. Green, everybody.
Greetings, everybody. Mr. Green, Dr. Green, whatever.
All right, can you please quickly introduce yourself, Mr. Green?
Yeah, sure. I am recently rewired. That's a play on words of retired because I have to stay connected to young people. So I know how to fish and golf, but that's not what I want to do with my life. So I've spent 27 years in education.
Wow.
And 19 years in corporate America. So I've got a corporate engineering background, and then, like I said, the 27 years in education from the U.S. to China, to Switzerland, back to China, to West Africa, back to China, to Thailand, back to China. So international is most of my teaching experience, and that's a short intro.
I mean,
I'm sure there's
great.
plenty more about.
Yeah. So glad to have you with us today, Mr. Green. I mean, thank you. And today we're doing the book Mr. Green recommended us. I have it right here next to me. Becoming by Michelle
That is it.
Obama.
That is
Right.
it.
Yeah. This is pretty interesting because I think, Ryan, have you read another memoir before, or is this your first one?
I mean, I read Elon Musk's autobiography, not autobiography. I think it's just a biography, and I felt like it was really different because like his was more, it was less narrative based and more on also because it's not an autobiography, but it's a lot less interesting. I feel like
Okay.
this one was a lot better. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a kind of fresh experience for me because it's a memoir. It's a genre we haven't covered yet on this channel. I mean, this was my first memoir, so it's kind of interesting diving into another person's life so much in detail. You know what I mean? Just learning everything almost, how they've become themselves at their present point. So it's a pretty unique experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely found the book so I'm kind of a procrastinator, so I read almost half of the book in one day, maybe 3 days ago. So and I felt like it was really easy to just keep on reading the book because she does an excellent job on introducing a lot of major events in her life in a very, I guess, in a very addicting way because I couldn't really it was a really good book. I felt like it had a lot of great lessons in it as well, which I'm sure we're gonna touch upon later.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and Mr. Green, how did you come across the book, in the first place?
Well, I guess I have to be honest that politically, I've leaned more left as I've gotten older. I've voted both ways in the U.S. political system, Republican and Democratic. Earlier in my life, I would say I probably voted more Republican, and then later more consistently Democratic. My value systems, and we'll talk about that in terms of becoming. My value systems have probably become more in that direction. And so I have a lot of respect for the Obamas. I think Barack Obama and Michelle are both amazing people. Nobody's perfect, we get that, but pretty amazing people and trajectories and education. And so that's how I kind of came across the book when she released it. Like you and I were talking, Jamie, a little bit earlier. I don't think I read it right away. I think I downloaded it on Kindle a few years later. But as we'll talk about in a little bit, how I began to really dig into the notion of becoming, when I did that, boy, I fired that Kindle back up and I read that book again. And then you reached out to me and what book do you want to talk about, Mr. Green? Hey, why don't we do Becoming?
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I mean, there's actually one section I'm curious what you thought about, page 384. Michelle Obama, she's talking about how it was this kind of program at the White House, I think, reaching out to these young people, and there was this kind of paragraph that reads that it also affirmed the idea that kids will invest more when they feel they're being invested in. I'm pretty sure that was in the UK, I think, when the grades of these students were rising drastically from average C minus to A, right? So I mean, I remember like as a student, as your student in the past years, like I recall you being like kind of a teacher who was kind of, equally dedicated to each student, like regardless of their academic capabilities. So I'm curious, like what you think about kind of that theory of kids will invest more when they feel they're being invested in.
Yeah, it's a great quote, and you're right. That is really meaningful, and it's funny because when you started talking about me creating individual relationships with my students, I got some pretty amazing feedback from my students in Thailand, where I just finished up, that reinforced how important that is. And like with you in the class, I remember that. There's an effect in psychology called the Pygmalion effect. You might have studied it, you might have read about it, where basically it's the same thing, where people tend to rise to the level of the expectations placed upon or encouraged in them. And so the quote that Michelle Obama had there is consistent with that. When kids feel connected and valued, when they feel like their voice is important, when they feel like they are important human beings, if there's that kind of a safe learning space around them, it allows them to take intellectual risks, it allows them to be themselves. They know they're okay to be who they are, and especially in middle school years, and even high school, but especially in middle school years, that's really important. So yeah, that's a good quote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was thinking that, like, on my own experience, I know I wasn't in your class. I was in Miss Hable, another teacher's class.
Miss Hable,
and
Ginger Hable, she's great.
And I felt like she was also a really great teacher, and I felt how I was able to learn a lot more because I was a lot more comfortable in her classroom. I feel like fortunately, all my teacher experiences in math class have been very positive. So I don't really have anything to compare it to, but I still feel like it was a great environment to learn, and I feel like whenever I stepped into the classroom, it'd just be, I believe if it were like a less positive environment, then I'd have more trouble learning and focusing on work.
And also just to add like another part in, I recall like the part where Michelle Obama was like, she was in high school and this college counselor was telling her she was not Princeton material. Yeah, and I was thinking that if the person who was hearing that had like lower self-esteem and was like less competitive and aggressive than the author, I think maybe that would have kind of put them in a position where the educators would have limited their possibilities, like the kids' possibilities, in terms of what they thought they could achieve. I found that pretty interesting, yeah.
If I could touch on that one, Jamie, what I captured in some of my notes here, forgive me for looking down, page 88, 91, and other pages, you might remember, she had a refrain in her book that she kept coming back to from time to time. And it was, quote, "Am I good enough?" It's a question she's asking herself over and over again throughout her adult life. As a kid and into her adult life, even when she was a lawyer at a high-powered firm in Chicago. And her answer to herself over time became more affirmatively, "Yes, in fact, I am." And so it's interesting because the book's in three parts, as you'll remember. Part one was becoming me. Part two is becoming us, her and Barack. And then part three was becoming more. And she had a real competitive streak in her. She always wanted to be ahead. Driven somewhat by her family values as she was growing up, she was pushed to be her best, as her brother Craig was. He was the first, of course, to go to Princeton before her. But Michelle Obama was a driven person, and some of it, the role of race certainly played into it. The way she was treated sometimes, the way she was talked down to, for example, by the counselor you mentioned, and she took that as I think she mentioned this in the book. I'm going to show you. Yes, in fact, I am good enough at anything that she chooses to do.
Yeah. And also, speaking of like the "I'll show you" part, what also really kind of piqued my interest was the fact that after she got into Princeton, like she comes back and then says, like, she didn't go visit the counselor to say, "Guess what? I got into Princeton." You know what I mean? Like, on page 67, it says it would have done nothing for either of us, and in the end I hadn't needed to show her anything. I was only showing myself. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, just kind of, I think perhaps all of us have this kind of moment in our lives where we feel doubted, or like our values get kind of underplayed by another person perhaps. And then like we kind of have this, I'll show you, I'll come back, I'll show you what I can do, I'll show you what I can be. But I think, because I'm pretty sure like one of her other famous quotes, Michelle Obama, was like, I think it was like, when they go low, we go high, like something of the sort.
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind
Yep.
of, I can kind of see that, reflected in that moment where she just doesn't visit the counselor because, again, she only needed to show herself that she can do it, right? Which I find pretty, like, I respect that. I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Relating to the point where you said how she later in the story, after she got into Princeton and like kind of defied the expectations her counselor set on her, I felt like it was like obviously I thought it was like a really well written part of the book, and I've also noticed how it was really similar to a lot of other moments where she defies expectations. I also think how there's a lot of characters in the book where after they're first introduced, they're connected to through a moment like later in the book. So like a lot of the people she meets, and maybe that's just because like she, as like a writer, you want to only include the people who are, I guess, have a lot of impact on your life. But anyway, she does a really great way of connecting back to characters she introduced, like a lot of the people she meets in high school, she's like somehow connecting it to a lot of lessons she's learned. Like even though it's a biography, each supporting character is like very nuanced. I feel like it's really thought out, like her story.
That's a really good point. A couple of things there strike me about what you said there, Ryan. One is, I mean, she was really good and is really good with people, although she would tell you Barack Obama is way better with people than she is, but she maintained a lot of key relationships there. And you remember as her career continued to take off, and I think she was the one that introduced some key people to Barack early on in the Chicago political system too. So she had some significant influences on Barack Obama's sphere of influence in Chicago as well. And she did do a good job of maintaining and growing those relationships. And kind of the point that Jamie made there, and you did as well, about the infamous counselor who put her down. You know, it's interesting because when you write a book, you can do pretty much what you want, right? You're gonna get editor's advice, you're gonna get the publisher's advice. But she could have called out that person by name. I don't think she did in the book, as I recall. Don't need to. That counselor knows exactly who that person is in that book when the counselor read the book.
Definitely. Yeah, and also because Mr. Green, you mentioned like how Michelle Obama seems to have very strong relationships with people like around her. And I think that's also, I guess, moving on to a slightly darker tone, but it also kind of reminds me of how, like, like early on in the book, in the Becoming Me section, I believe, she faces like a lot of early losses in the forms of her dad, Fraser Robinson III, and also her friend Suzanne. Very like both people who basically showed her a kind of, like in the case of Suzanne, like she showed Michelle Obama like a method different from her control freak kind of thing, where
yes,
yeah, like learning to live life more freely and like without restraint, right?
Bingo.
And then on the other hand, like her dad, her father, kind of demonstrated that resilience, that kind of holding on strong. Like I think her dad had a serious amount of willpower. You know what I mean? Just even when his body was pulling him back, he continued to think that he has to go to work, like he has to kind of support the family. I think Michelle Obama probably gets that kind of I'll see it to the end kind of thing from her dad, honestly. Yeah,
her dad, I mean, like you said, Jamie, I guess it's true that in the book, I think it was even a caption under one of the pictures midway through the book, where he basically never missed a shift his entire career in the Chicago public water system. I mean, he was really dedicated to being his best, being there every day. As you said, when his body was failing more and more over the years. She remember that time when she saw him. She heard him click the back door to go out to the car. She went to check on him. He was lying down outside, and she's like, "Do I go help pick him up, or what's the right thing to do here?" Yeah. No, I won't. He won't want me to do that. He doesn't want anyone to do that. He doesn't want to have his dignity impacted. And lo and behold, he did get himself up and he did go. A pretty amazing role model in her life.
I feel like Michelle Obama is a really good writer because she isn't afraid to touch on like all of the dark things in her life. So she's not afraid to come out and be vulnerable, because I guess that's because she's not ashamed of it, and she feels like it's a really obviously it impacted her life a lot when her father and when her best friend in college died. I also felt like it was really like powerful, like that moment where the dad fell and she was hesitating whether to go help him or not, because like it was just a really, I don't know, it was like kind of resounded deeply within me, because I felt like I would have wanted to like go outside and help. If that was my dad, I wanted to go outside, like help him. But then her actions also made me realize how like maybe it's not the best to do that, and that just really deep. I feel that moment.
Tough decision.
Yeah.
Can I bring up a slightly different one and bring in Barack Obama?
Sure. Yeah, feel free.
Because it also frames. You were talking about her being vulnerable and her expressing herself very openly in the book, which is pretty cool. I guess this probably would have been in part 2 where it was becoming us, and she reflected Barack's strengths versus hers. And in one paragraph on page 153, she said the following, quote, "His," and that's Barack's, "his was the lone voice telling me to just go for it, to erase the worries and go toward whatever I thought would make me happy. It was okay to make my leap into the unknown because," and this would count as startling news to most every member of the Shields Robinson family, go back all the way to Dandy and Southside, the unknown wasn't gonna kill me. "Don't worry," Barack was saying, "you can do this. We'll figure it out." So when I was reading some of that in other parts of the book, she wasn't a real natural optimist in some ways. She would work hard, she would do whatever it took to succeed, but she didn't have the same optimism. The whole, of course, audacity of hope that Barack, one of the books that he wrote, she didn't have that naturally within her. So obviously, as in any good partnership, any good marriage, the play there, the interplay between the two of them was pretty cool. And she was very honest about that, reflecting upon what she was good at, but then Barack was just like releasing her, trust the journey, trust the process, which is part of what I'm sure will come up more and more as we talk about becoming here. He helped her significantly to become further by helping her believe more in herself, and just go for it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I remember Barack Obama was late on day one. I remember that. It kind of shows you like how in a way different their characters are. I think Barack honestly gives more of a Suzanne vibe, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of chill. And also touching on the kind of the hope thing you mentioned with Barack Obama. What really interested me was like in the near end of the book. This is when Donald Trump gets elected president, and she's like all shocked and everything. And then like she says she has to remind myself of the dignity and decency I've seen in people throughout my life, the many obstacles that have already been overcome. And then she kind of speaks of hope as a form of faith, an antidote to fear. So I think it was kind of interesting where you can see that kind of angle, like this adversarial angle between cynicism and pessimism versus hope and like faith and optimism. Because like Barack Obama is probably the most famous poster, is the hope poster, right?
Yeah.
His whole thing is based on hope. Like I even even went and watched 2004 DNC speech, because like the book mentioned it, one of his key messages was like, we can do this, we can change this country to make it even better than it already is. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think Barack Obama's whole kind of hope radiance thing impacted Michelle Obama, where I guess earlier on in her point of life, if she experienced the kind of shocking of Trump got elected, she would have probably, sunk deeper into that pessimistic side in her. But instead, like, now she's saying, wait a moment, like, calm down. There are so many things that have already been achieved, and there are just so many like good people in this world. And just because like this one thing happens doesn't mean that, oh, everything is gone, everything is over. Like the world is gonna end, it's gonna die. It's like she doesn't give off that vibe.
Yeah. And I feel like so what Dr. Green's quote was like later in the book, it was also like similarly connected to it on page 66, where Michelle, I think it was Michelle, she said that failure is a feeling long before it's an actual result. And now I feel like that was a really great quote, and I feel like it's a lesson to people to not think pessimistically, because if you start thinking that you're gonna fail, then you have like you see less opportunities to succeed in the first place.
I captured that quote also. I highlighted that in my Kindle and put it in my little notes here. It's a very powerful point.
I mean, yeah. Mr. Green, you mentioned where in the off time, the very end of the book, where Michelle Obama kind of explains the title and why this whole book is called Becoming, and what, because like becoming as a word itself it signifies, it kind of implies something that changes into another thing that's typically in a way greater than the original version. You know what I mean? Like you become this, like you become a great person, you become a writer, like that. And she mentions how her becoming is over her entire lifetime and the journey does not end, right? And because Mr. Green, you've mentioned how you like to talk about rewirement, like kind of that play on words there. And I think that it's a very similar concept of that, rewire, retire, and Michelle Obama's becoming. So can you talk to us about that?
Ooh, that's a lot. Yes, I guess I'll do the second part first. Rewirement, as the play on words suggests, is to stay connected in some way that's meaningful, to add value, to continue to make a positive difference in this world. And that's what I kind of basically refer to with rewirement. Becoming, that, as you said, is a very, very rich, deep word. And I guess what I will perhaps do is, can I throw out one of Michelle's first quotes at the end of the book around what you said, why she chose the title?
Yeah, sure.
I'll throw that out. So this is on page 418, getting toward the end. She said, at 54, I am still in progress. This is her, Michelle. I'm 54 years old. She's now 61. And I hope that I always will be. For me, quote unquote, becoming isn't about arriving somewhere or achieving a certain aim. I see it instead as forward motion, a forward motion, a means of evolving and a way to reach continuously toward a better self. The journey doesn't end, just like you said, Jamie. So for her, it is about lifelong. And I guess to finish that, I'll just go ahead and throw out what she said, and then we can, if you'd like, we can wrap it and we can add more to it. Page 419, this is the very next page. Becoming requires equal parts patience and rigor. Becoming is never giving up on the idea that there's more growing to be done. It's a journey. Last one, page 420. I love this sentence. You guys might have captured this one as well. And I put it in bold in my journal. It's not about being perfect.
Yes.
Yes, it's not about being perfect. It's about where you get yourself in the end. It isn't about only that in the end. There's power in allowing yourself to be known and heard, in owning your unique story, in using your authentic voice, and there's grace in being willing to know and hear others. This, for me, is how we become. That's what she said.